Hey, how's it going, Dan?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Happy to be in touch with you. Hope you guys are okay in London. I'm here from beautiful Miami.
Yeah,
We don't call it the Magic City for nothing, and happy to be with you.
yeah. I don't want to. I was going to ask you what the weather's like, but I don't want to know. To be
But
fair.
the weather, yeah, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. Believe me. I was just with Paris like half an hour ago. The weather is, I mean, it's probably the best moment of the year. February. If you want to come to Miami, weather-wise, for the beach, it's really that moment of the year. We pretty much every day. I think we have 75 Fahrenheit. 23 Celsius degrees.
Yeah,
So which is great,
perfect.
right? You don't want to be here over the summer.
Yeah,
There's
it's
too
too
much
too much.
moist and humidity, and you
Yeah,
can have occasional rain. It can be a little bit, chilly in December, but that moment of the year, like February, March, that's the best.
because
That's
it's isn't it? Is it April when the spring break is, and
It's
they'll
March. No,
is
it's March. It's
it
more the
March?
second part of March.
Yeah,
And to be honest, I recently relocated to Miami, but I was kind of back and forth between Europe and Miami last year. During the second half of March, I'm going to be in Texas. Like I have
oh,
business meetings, and I don't want to be here because you got like 1 week, usually around March the 20th. That is crazy. But by the way, it's only on Miami Beach. I don't live in Miami Beach. I live and work in Brickell, which is something that we can discuss. That's really the place for finance. That's
I've
where the
heard
hedge
about it.
funds, Citadel, everyone came to Brickell. So Brickell is like a Manhattan by the sea.
Yeah, yeah, because there's just so much happening in that neck of the woods at the minute, isn't there? I think it's just there's a lot of people from all over the US
All over
migrating
the
down
US, all over the world. I mean, you got
there.
people,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm an American citizen too, but coming back from Europe, Asia. But of course, you're right. You have this migration of people from New York, California. It started with the COVID. Then it was kind of slow over the last, and now it's resuming a little bit with a new mayor in New York,
yeah, yeah,
and international crowds,
yeah,
Latin America, even Europe. There's not a day without someone asking me about Miami. Actually, over the
yeah.
weekend, my goddaughter's parents from France, they're coming here. They're going to visit the city because they want to explore maybe for next year. Move. So everyone is interested in Miami.
Yeah, and a lot from California. I think there's a lot with the tax thing as well. I think, isn't there? But
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
tax thing. You don't have any local taxes like what we call the state tax. Doesn't mean that you don't pay taxes. Okay, you pay the federal, but of course, compared with New York, you're going to be 25% lower.
is that
Okay?
much? Yeah, it's a
and,
big.
and less regulation. For tech, for AI, you have less regulations. Like we have self-driving cars. It's a place for acceleration and optimism as
Yeah,
well.
innovation. Yeah, it's yeah, a lot of positives I think coming out of that part of the world at the minute. And yeah, like I say, I think it's about 40 degrees here in the UK today. So I don't want to hear anything else about your weather in this
No,
conversation.
no,
It's
we're
just
not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about finance and AI. I
yeah,
promise.
well, that's why we're here. Yeah. So I guess we're here not to talk about the weather as much as I could talk about Miami and the weather all day. But yeah, this is the reason I get you on. Basically, just to introduce you. Well, obviously, the reason why I think we got connected was it was on LinkedIn, wasn't it? And you mentioned you're obviously got a background in financial services, and now you've migrated into the AI side of things, and you're
Yeah.
focusing more on compliance and automation and onboarding, which is something that I don't do, but I'm more on the prospecting side with AI in the financial services space. But yeah, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of a background, and when we can discuss my new company, and you will see even in terms of prospecting what you're doing, I'm kind of doing the same thing too. So this is something definitely that we should discuss that. But anyway, I digress. My background: my name is Sébastien. I'm French American, but I was born French, and then it's only at the end of my business school, I was supposed to do an internship in the U.S. And stay 6 months in the U.S. But at the time, I fell in love with New York and the United States, and lo and behold, the 6 months became 11 years. Okay, so I began my career on Wall Street, essentially as a financial analyst. Pretty much, trained in the value investing style. In the early 2000s, with Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham. Everyone was trained, looking at the numbers, looking at the cash flow. So that's really my background and my background in finance and wealth management. I worked for a bunch of banks and hedge funds in New York, I became an American citizen, something like 15 years ago. And then what happened in my personal life is that I came back to Europe, in early 2015. I continued to have several businesses in financial services, usually between Europe and the US. I was still active in the US. And then at some point, I get into tech at the beginning of this decade with another company. So I've always been an entrepreneur, but also that's another part of my life. As I was trained as an economist, I always continued to teach, lecture, write books or op-eds, on the economy at large, and including technology and AI. Again, starting in 2020, 2021. And what happened is that a couple of months ago, I was trying to develop products for wealth managers in the US. I had in the back of my mind to come back to the United States permanently because over the last 2 to 3 years, spent a lot of time here in Florida. Loved it. Loved the optimism, the entrepreneur, the fact that a lot of my contacts from New York, anyway, they were moving to South Florida. So at some point, I had to follow them. But I also connected to the tech scene in Miami. And not everyone in Europe is familiar with Miami as a tech hub, but it's really becoming a tech hub. Okay.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. First of all, because whenever you have a capital that is coming, you can undertake more projects. But also, you have so many entrepreneurs from Latin America, from
Yeah.
Europe
It's
that
the
are coming
networking
here.
side.
Yeah, in terms of I think that Silicon Valley is still the main hub. Silicon Valley, New York, Boston, but it's also a pricey proposal for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
To be there. I'm not saying that Miami is cheap, but South Florida, you can have a more chilly life. It's a different thing. The threshold, is not the same as in Boston or in Silicon Valley. I think that if you want to go to Silicon Valley, you need to have a world-changing proposal with your startup, right?
Mm.
Here, everyone is more focused on applied AI, certain verticals, healthcare, space, finance, like me, obviously, and you can do so maybe you're not going to create the next open AI, in Miami, but you can definitely create, unicorn and decacorn. And who knows, once you have the capital, in 10 years, it's going to be a different thing. But so I
Yeah.
was trying to develop this AI wealth management product from Europe. And then I realized a couple of things. I realized that first of all, there were a lot of other entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley or London or New York also developing great products. And also that the adoption rate was kind of slow. And
Yeah.
that's why we can talk about the wealth managers. Here, in the US, we call them the RIA, Registered Investment Advisors. Okay, let's call them financial advisors. It's easier.
Yeah.
But the financial advisors were kind of slow to adopt these technologies. And so I came back a couple of months ago with another strategy, which is from the outside, it looks a little bit like a fund, but it's not a fund. It's an operating platform. It's a company called Eudokia Wealth. Eudokia is a word in Greek that you will find in the Bible that means prosperity. But the ancient Greeks, there are like 10 different words for prosperity. Okay. And Eudokia, we could translate that as ethical prosperity. Okay.
Right.
Ethical prosperity,
Makes
fair,
sense.
fair prosperity. And you can see here the inspiration, from Bible and the Old Testament. And so at Eudokia Wealth is an acquisition platform. It's a roll-up strategy. You guys are familiar with the roll-up strategy in any industry. That's when you buy a lot of small businesses and you conglomerate them, right? Because with the scale, you can improve the margins when it comes to real estate, cost, etc. We're doing the same thing in the financial advisor space with two caveats. Caveat number one, it's an AI driven thesis. So because I have developed AI products, because I'm very much branched into all the worldwide entrepreneurs developing AI products, the idea is to bring my AI stack in-house develop, externally develop, third parties, training, whatever, to accelerate the transition to AI, to transform these very small businesses into a single AI native wealth manager. Okay,
Yeah. Makes
so
sense.
that's really one thing. The second thing, second caveat, we are only focused on a certain geography. It's Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia, maybe later Texas, and it's the wealth migration thesis. The fact that obviously as a new player, I don't want to compete with the more sophisticated and bigger guys in New York or LA or Chicago or whatever. I am in a geography of the United States where you have a wealth migration. So you have new clients, like you have people
Yeah.
coming from Europe or other parts of the United States, Canada, Latin America, they're underserved right now in terms of financial advisory, and they're bringing tons of money. Not only they're going to make money here, but they're also bringing money out of the wealth managers in New York or LA or Chicago. Okay, so that's and even potentially even Europe, because when you have someone from London and Paris moving permanently here, and that's my case. Of course, after a while, I'm not going to deal with a financial advisor, in Paris, but I'm going to deal with someone local. So
Mhm.
that's really the thesis. That's the early inning. We're still in a fundraising mode because you raise money, not really like a startup, because you raise money to acquire companies. So we're really raising money like a private equity fund, although technically we're not a fund.
Okay, makes sense. And given your background in spanning economics and entrepreneurship and now AI, what was like the one kind of moment that fundamentally made you realize that AI could transform and restructure
Yeah.
financial services specifically? Like, was
Well,
there
first of all, from my first period, 2004, 2014 on Wall Street, at some point I was aware, especially I was in the hedge fund industry, of what we used to call big data or machine learning, I would
yeah,
say in the mid 2010s decade. But at the time, it wasn't that practical. I was myself already a little bit in the tech space, doing a little bit of business angel investing, was at some point very much into crypto. I think the moment was two things. First of all, I had someone, at a French bank who pretty much did a demo to me in 2021 of something that looked like an LLM, but that was prior to ChatGPT. And then pretty much like everyone also the November 2022 moment, which is a
yeah,
ChatGPT moment when you had the public
oh,
release.
big
So I
moment,
think
wasn't
in November 2022, I was kind of ready because I knew what an LLM was, etc. It's just that I didn't have any that much practical hands-on experience, right? But
it? Yeah,
November 2022, it changed everything. And
it
by
did.
the way, at the time, I was writing a book on the economics of the metaverse and virtual reality,
Oh, really?
and I was supposed to give a manuscript for Christmas. And I told my editor, "Hey, let me add another chapter, because
Yeah,
AI. We've been talking about AI for 20 years. It wasn't that practical, but I think it's becoming practical because over the last month, I spent hours and hours playing with that new toy. Please let me add a chapter, on AI."
yeah. So the metaverse didn't really materialize into as much as what everyone was making out at the point, did it? It's
Yeah, but make no mistake, we say the same thing about AI, 20 years ago. AI, if you look at the history.
all
So
right.
prior to moving back to the United States, I went back to my alma mater, okay, my business school, which is AGC, in Paris, and I created several classes that I'm teaching, that I was teaching about AI. One was called AI is your coworker, something very practical, and then economics of AI. And usually, I will devote half an hour to the history of the technology. And this is my personal count, but between 1956, which is the year that a bunch of scientists at Dartmouth University, they coined the term artificial intelligence, up to ChatGPT, you had at least 5 or 6 AI winters where during 5 to 6 years, nothing happened. Like, it was a total
Yeah,
failure, no money, no capital, etc. So I think the metaverse went through the same phase. The funny thing is, with AI, it's now so easy and so cheap for anyone to generate images, pictures, videos. So the reality of a metaverse that didn't make sense from an economic standpoint in 2022, I can guarantee you that by 2029, 2030, it's going to be very much a reality again.
yeah. That's
And,
interesting.
and first of all, in video games, movies, Hollywood is going to be completely disrupted.
Mm,
So I think that the future, for the next decade is that, let's say you're a famous writer, or I don't know, you write a book and you have a new character, a new franchise. You're going to be able for very cheap, to turn, let's say, your own Game of Thrones into a virtual universe using AI, where people will come and play and go. So you're going to see the media and entertainment industry and publishing industry, they're going to be completely transformed by AI
yeah.
through
Oh,
this metaverse connection.
yeah, you're making me regret a decision because I invested a lot into like metaverse stocks and crypto and stuff back
Yeah,
by startups and ended up selling it when it
yeah.
that, but
Of
maybe
course,
now.
there's a great saying by one of the greatest Brits ever, John Maynard Keynes, where he say, in the long term, we're all dead, right? So that's the same thing when it comes to investing. I
Yeah,
think you were right, but the
I-
issue is if you cannot hold on your position, don't have any regrets because I gave you, an horizon line which is 2029, 2030. That's still distant.
yeah, makes sense. And in terms of what you talk about in terms of like the economic singularity, which is obviously a bold concept, like but in practical terms, to like a wealth manager running a practice today, just break that down for us, Sebastian. What does that mean in real?
Yeah. So that's the economist in me, who coined that word of economic singularity. The singularity is a word from the tech space where a lot of tech luminaries, over the last decades, they talk about several milestones. First of all, AGI, artificial general intelligence, which we are chasing at the moment, probably before the end of the decade. And then singularity. Singularity is a moment where really our lives are completely transformed by AI and new technologies and biotechnology. What I call the economic singularity is that if you look the history of humanity over the last 80 years, on average, the economic growth, the global economic growth was around 2.53%, a little bit less in the Western world, more, of course, in the developing world. And we made this is a pace where, a paradigm shift occurred with the Industrial Revolution. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the global growth was more like 0.3%, right? And prior to the end of the Middle Age, it was almost zero. So it's a little bit the history of humanity that from time to time, but it's like every millennia, basically you have an exponential change where we go from 0.03% a year to 0.3%, and then 3%, after the Second World War. And the economic singularity is the moment when, because of these new technologies, we're going to transition into a new phase of economic acceleration. We don't really see it at the moment because it takes time and because AI is still, in the first phase. But we can make a good case that by the next decade, at least for some countries, we're going to transition to a new growth regime where an economy like the United States that seems to be mature right now, but is still growing at 2.5%, could be growing 5 and 6%. And even countries like the UK and France, if they really use these technologies, they're going to be out of their anemic growth predicament at the moment. Because at the moment, France or the UK, when they have a 1% annual growth, everyone is like, wow, that's a great number. And Germany is almost at zero, right? So I think there's still the potential, even for Western Europe at some point, to transition to a new phase where growth is back to 2.5% like it used to be 20 years ago because of this acceleration. But for some countries like the US, China, the more advanced countries, I believe that during the next decade, you're not going to recognize these economies. They're going to be propelled by AI. And yeah, I can make the case that by the mid next decade, we should be in the United States, we can reach again a 4 to 5% growth, which is what you have right now in China, right?
Yeah, big time. And yeah, just to ask in terms of like the adoptment, in terms of like wealth managers and how are they, I think a lot of them are seeing the potential in AI, but not
Yeah,
a lot of them have operationalized it into like the day to day. And
yeah.
what in your opinion, what's the blocker? What's stopping them adopt it? Is it like the technology regulation or culture or something else?
Yeah,
What
let me talk about the blockers, all right, and then I'm going to talk about what I'm doing pretty much with my company, but we are focused on because obviously we have a certain strategy, that we are implementing. So the
yeah,
blockers, first of all, I think historically it's a people-driven business, right? And it's not going to change. It's not going to change. It might shock you, but in fact, what I'm telling the financial advisors is, hey, work with us because we're going to get rid of all the drudgery of your work, the compliance things, the forms, the constant emails, etc., with AI, so that you can get back to the roots of a business, which is talking to clients.
yeah,
Okay, but of course, because it's a people-driven business, a lot of people will tell you, "Hey, I don't care. It works. I have my clients. Technology is not the thing. What is going to make money for me? here in South Florida is going to a golf and playing golf with my best buddies who are my clients. And I respect that. I'm just saying the world is changing a little bit, especially if you want to get new clients, you want to be more efficient, you're going to have to use technology. So that's one blocker. Another blocker can be the administrative complexity, okay, compliance. But this is why, by the way, I focused on small businesses because today, if you go, so the American banks, they're quite good at modernizing their AI stack, but still, if you go to, I don't know, Barclays Wealth Management, I can tell you, even if you have good ideas with AI, etc., it's going to take a while to implement that because of compliance. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a lot of inertia, right? When I'm
Yeah.
buying, small financial advisor, it's a discussion between me and the founder and maybe one guy, and that's it. So I can
Yeah. It's less
implement,
bureaucracy, isn't there?
I can
Less.
be nimble, I can implement very fast. But for big banks, and I'm thinking about banks, let's say UBS Wealth Management, right, which is one of the
Yeah.
leaders in wealth management. Of course, they do experiments with AI, etc. But there's no way that they can move at my speed,
Yeah.
and that's a real issue. It's going to take them years, and it's going to be like with any technological disruption. They're going to try, they're going to do a couple of experiments, and then they're going to say, oh, these guys, they nailed it, and they're going to make acquisitions, right?
Yeah.
That's what happened with online banking, the internet. Remember, all banks, they couldn't move fast enough. But then at some point, with time, with acquisitions, they just acquire, companies, startups. And that's the way that eventually the internet, the emails, the intranet, they were eventually, mastered by the big banks.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It's just so much easier to get to where you need to be with the smaller, leaner business
Exactly.
models, aren't there? It's just
Exactly.
yeah, less hurdles to jump through, which is just yeah, that's
Yeah.
just makes
So
it
these
so
are
easy.
these are the brokers. Then where the opportunity lies, and I can tell you a little bit what I'm doing. First of all, when you're a financial advisor, that's true in the US, that's true in the UK or in continental Europe, you spend 60% of your time on, again, the drudgery of administrative work.
Yeah,
Filling in a lot of forms, ADV forms here, proof of funds, a lot of compliance stuff, etc. All of that is fairly simple. If you can map it, you can automate it with AI. Okay. And
yeah,
some independent wealth managers, sometimes they're very, very smart, very nimble too. They can do it on their own. It's just that not everyone is doing it, and it's not so easy. So that's, I would say, most the low hanging fruit, right, in improving margins with AI in that business is really automation of drudgery of daily tasks, scheduling meetings,
yeah,
emails, reminders, compliance, forms, etc., administrative work. That's one thing. Then you got a second bucket, which is something that I'm even more excited about, which is really investment research. Right now, your financial advisors, you always get emails by clients saying, "Hey, Bitcoin is crashing. What is it changing for my portfolio, etc." And you're not available 24/7, right? The clients they're using ChatGPT, but the information is not good. So what you can do with AI is to capture all the cognitive phenotype of your financial advisors, all their knowledge, but also the knowledge of the best experts that you can
mm,
bring to these
yeah,
financial advisors, so that at any given time, the client has the best answer, the best research. The client, has Apple stock. It can go on a chat. It can upload the last 10K, the last earnings release, and he has the best possible information coming both, again, from the knowledge of financial advisors, but also from knowledge of tons of financial experts that your average financial advisors, in Glasgow or Tampa doesn't have access, right? So
yeah,
we can bring best of the world products to any clients.
yeah,
That's the second pillar. So first pillar is really daily task automation, administrative compliance. Second is investment research. I'm very excited about that part because I'm a former Wall Street analyst,
yeah,
and really my dream is to come up with the best of the best of the best of the best analyst to support clients and maybe hedge funds, etc. I know it's an elusive dream, but I think I get there at some point. And then the
yeah,
third one is client prospecting, which is where you're very good at. And I'm trying to do my own thing. I'm trying to work with a couple of startups, to come up with a good products to automatically, at least according to my criteria here, finding this new person who for some reason got inherited money or made a donation to a university or buy a luxury car, whatever, anything that displays a new wealthy individual that I've never heard about,
Yeah. A signal.
automatically, so that my financial advisors every Monday they have a list of new persons to contact that no one has ever heard about.
Yeah. That's the key, I think, isn't it? It's a timing thing. And the beautiful thing is about AI, it can find these triggers and these kind of
Exactly.
windows of opportunity, these
Yeah.
signals that people are putting out online by doing deep research into individuals, which, yeah, just gets you in front of them before they've even got to the point of looking at the market to see
Yeah,
what happens to them.
because then it's too late. You're not gonna
Exactly.
be able to compete, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, now we all leave a lot of traces, online with administrative document, etc. If you connect to the
Yeah.
right API, it's a little bit complicated, but that's what we're trying to do. You know, sometimes federal database, etc. And anything that
Yeah.
is permitted, of course, then you can get early information. So
Yeah.
there's a lot
That's
to
the
do to
key.
use AI to improve prospection by financial advisors.
Yeah, and that's it. It's this, like you say, there's footprints. Like it's called Company's House in the UK, which is a big one. But it's yeah, basically Company's House just registers every move in business. Basically, when people register new businesses, when people got like exits, and yeah, and then there's obviously LinkedIn. Even just going through someone's LinkedIn feed when they've mentioned something in their feed, or when they've changed
Yeah,
roles or relocated. There's yeah, multiple different signals
yeah.
that
Social network definitely. I don't believe that just being on LinkedIn you're gonna catch everyone, because some people are very discreet. Like
yeah,
they're not gonna say on LinkedIn or Facebook that they sold their stock options from this startup, or that unfortunately the parents passed away and they got an inheritance. But again, you have court documents, you have official documents, at least here in the US, that makes that sort of a soft tracking, because we're not here to harass people. Okay.
yeah,
Again, we're only using public information, but all
yeah,
these databases now we have API, you can get connected. And I mean, you could go online and do that sort of a sleuth job, but it's
it's
too
gonna
time
take a long
consuming.
time.
With AI, you can automate everything,
Yeah,
and at the end of the day, the product is just an email that I
yeah,
get every
personalized.
Monday that says, "Hey, these are new names." Maybe we can have an email or phone number, not always, but and then it's up to me to try to find them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful time to be doing this stuff because, like you say, that information has been available, well, not forever, but since the internet was around, really. And it, yeah, to find that information out manually, it took a long
Yeah.
time to
And,
do
it,
that.
and, and I think the sector where where the information is the best is like residential real estate. Like in the US, you have something called the MLS
Yeah,
listing, and
database.
everything pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, and in terms of like, I know you mentioned like the gap between US and European AI adoption. Like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of how is that playing out in financial services specifically? And what should UK advisors take from that?
I think the first gap prior to talking about adoption is just innovation, because the technologies are all American ones, right? Then
Yeah,
what's going to make the difference in terms of diffusion is the number of data centers. That's where the UK, Germany, France, they need to massively invest, because let's face it, even though you got a couple of LLMs, in Europe, like Mistral, in France, uh, the battle for the LLMs, like the first layer, I mean, it's already lost by Europe. So now what they have to do is to focus really on the infrastructure, because if you want to be sovereign, it's not just a question of using a domestic LLM or an American LLM or a Chinese one. It's really you need to have what we call compute capacity on your own ground, right? So you need to have a data center in your country. Otherwise, you're totally different. You're going to be dependent from another country.
mm,
I think that again, when I look at the big banks in the UK and France, so let's say we talk about Barclays and BNP, in terms of AI adoption, they are really lagging behind, Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs.
yeah,
And I think it's not just related to AI. It's a different posture towards innovation, because again, 25 years ago with the internet, it was pretty much the same game. Also, the fact that the Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they look at startups, they're going to acquire startups. You don't have that tradition, in Europe. Now, on the other side, of course, these big banks, they have a very large footprint, in their domestic markets. So I don't think like they feel threatened right now. You know what I mean? It's a market that moves very slowly. Uh, Take the example of Germany. It's even worse. So in Germany, most people they're gonna stick to their financial advisors for their whole life. Like they're not gonna switch, right? So if you're an incumbent, you're not so much concerned about new technologies.
True.
I think the UK is probably the closest to the United States. I think that you're gonna have disruption because people the more of this tradition of trying to shop around, finding the best solution, the best. That's another thing also with AI. We haven't talked about the clients, the final clients. Are they asking for AI? I would say in the first step, no, because what they're asking for is efficiency, right, and lower fees. So they live in a world where if you're a financial advisor and you say, yeah, I spend a lot of time reading all the documents, etc., it has a price, they're not going to trust you. They're not going to believe you. They're going to tell you, hey, you should use AI and be way faster and more efficient. So they expect you to do it. It's a given. That's one thing. Second thing is the younger clients, people, let's say in wealth management, you have some clients who made money in tech or in crypto. But these are the one, that are expecting to have a 24/7 chatbot
Yeah, it's
giving
a new
advice,
world now.
and not just an advisor, that is going to go and have a lunch with them every quarter.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not what they
It's a different
expect.
expectation now, isn't it? And that's the way it's going. It's not just now, it's the future. It's future-proofing your business and meeting the new
Yeah,
money where it is, because there's so
yeah,
many who are stuck in the old way doing things with the old money, and it's a different world than it's gonna be, and you need to be thinking ahead
yeah.
and meeting
and,
people where they are.
and also these younger clients interested in AI, they're gonna ask the financial advisors to provide investment opportunities also in the field of AI, meaning that and you have younger clients who made money in tech, financial services, crypto, etc. They would also expect you to have a deal flow of AI startups, maybe of investments in data centers. So it's also
Mm.
changing the range of investment opportunities that you as a financial advisor you're bringing to your clients. Because if you only say, hey, I have a real estate deal, I have stocks, bonds, it's not going to be enough, right?
Yeah.
You need to provide a deal flow of tech AI startups. You need investment in data centers, maybe in energy projects related to data centers. You know that, right? For data centers, we're going to have to massively invest in energy projects. So I mean, again, if you're a wealth manager, and all you can talk about is stocks, bonds, and a little bit of real estate, you're not gonna make
Oh,
it with
awesome.
these new clients.
Yeah. And that's where you need to be thinking, as I mentioned, because there's a lot of new money coming into the market now, and it's
Yeah.
only going to go more towards that in that direction. Um, and in terms of like, if you were like a wealth manager just listening to this and they're not done anything with AI up to now, like what's the single kind of most high leverage kind of move that they can make that you'd recommend, Sebastian?
Well, there are two things with AI. They need to experiment. So, first of all, I think they should experiment just in their personal life with the LLMs if they are not familiar with. Because if you play around, with ChatGPT or Grok or Claude for a few hours, even if it is just to plan your next vacations, right? You're gonna see what you can do with
Mm,
in your practice of wealth management. You should also be aware that most of the AI systems that you're going to use in wealth management, they call agents or agentic AI, right? So they're very different from ChatGPT. I don't think that the what is at stake for a wealth manager is not so much should he be good at ChatGPT or not. You got a host of new products, right? You see that crop of new products every day,
yeah,
and usually you're gonna have to train in more professional products. So training is really important. But whatever products you're using, I think you should get at least a general training in AI because these products are very different from traditional software, right? Traditional software, you have an input, you have an output, and it's always the same. In AI, with LLMs, you have a great variability of the results. The automation is a little bit different. So I would suggest two things: play around with the LLMs, right? but more importantly, try to get a training. You can go online. You have online courses by Google. Try to understand a little bit the technology. So, in other words, don't go directly towards the product that you are interested in. Okay, maybe tomorrow you wake up, you see an advertisement for I don't know, a new automation tool for compliance. That's great, but prior to that, please try to understand the technology,
Yeah, that's the
because
key.
otherwise you're going to be overwhelmed. There's so many products, like
Yeah.
even itself, I cannot track all the startups in the
Oh
field.
god, yeah. This is half the battle. I'm pretty much obsessed with it these days. I'm watching all the YouTube videos every day, and like, every few days I'm like, wow, and then I'm like, wow, that's like, which one do I test myself to see how it's
Yeah,
going to work?
I no longer have the time. I'm telling you, for my company, we're developing a couple of things domestically in house, and then I'm supposed to bring the best of third parties, but it takes me a lot. Sometimes I
Yeah.
find a good solution, and then 3 months later, there's a new one. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
tell me about it.
so
That's because I've got a course online, and that's the problem with the course model. It's very, especially with the AI, you record a module, and then like you say, 2 months later, there's something that's just trumped that what I've done that module on. So it's just that's why I've changed my model now to
yeah.
more of a consultative basis, where I can just feed that information through live to
I,
people.
I could have a look at your course. Maybe I have some ideas. Like I say, I was teaching AI, but remember, at a business school, so it wasn't specifically for wealth management. But maybe this is something that we need to do at some point. To create a
Yeah,
course.
definitely.
We need to find a way for the course to evolve very
That's
rapidly.
it.
That's
Yeah,
the issue.
that's
That's the challenge.
that's the challenge with AI, because I don't think I've ever seen anything more rapidly evolving than my background is digital marketing, and obviously that evolved, but then I thought
Yeah,
that evolved fast, and now AI is just like it's
yeah,
but that's another need for people like us to educate people and keep in touch on what's going on. And yeah, just going back to what you mentioned there, that is what I say to that question as well, is just try things for yourself. Just try ChatGPT is the one that is the most popular, isn't it? It's the first model, and
yeah.
people have got that familiar in their head. And
But
yeah,
for finance, Claude is making a lot of improvements right now,
yeah,
so
God,
people
yeah,
should have a look. Myself, I still need to spend more time with Claude, especially what we call Claude Co-work,
yeah,
which is stemming out of something called Claude Code that was used by the developers, but now there is like a basic version that anyone can use, even if you're not into coding. So
yeah,
you have also Manus AI for the
yeah,
agents, and I'm only talking about non-wealth management AI, just
yeah.
general AI.
But
You have obviously, for presentations, slides, creating content. You can use Google Notebook. Please
yeah,
experiment with Google Notebook. If you have just a Gmail account or a Google Workspace with Gemini, you can try Google Notebook. I'm doing a lot
yeah,
of presentations with Google Notebook these
yeah,
days,
they're really
or
good.
audio podcast, etc. So you should give it a try.
Yeah, and this is what I'm because I use Claude a lot more than any other LLM at the moment, and it,
Yeah,
it
I
just
think next week here in Miami, I'm going to a sort of a meetup organized by Anthropic
oh yeah,
around Claude in finance, Claude in law. I know a lot of my fellow lawyers that are using Claude.
yeah, it's the number one for me. It's just
Yeah,
Trump's ChatGPT. I don't even there's certain things I do use it for, just personal things,
yeah.
like I do cooking and I'll ask it a recipe on the voice thing. But like for work, I just keep Claude is the one for me.
I,
Claude
do-
is
I do a lot of writing. I have
yeah,
an op-ed with Washington Examiner here in the US. I have others in France. And I still do a lot of writing, ChatGPT. But it's also because I invested so much time. Like the system knows me and my writing
yeah.
style so well that, it's kind of a lazy thing, but I don't want to go to another. I'm using Grok for
Well,
fun
this
from
is
time to time. But I
yeah,
invested so much time with ChatGPT. That's the
yeah.
issue. That's the switching cost. The switching cost is just time.
Yeah, there is. This is a conversation I've had with a few of my clients recently, but there's quite an easy way to kind of export all your conversations from ChatGPT and then upload them into Claude. And
Well, the industry is working on a kind of a standout, by the way. So we might be able, by the end of the year, to easily export that. The question is it that the LLMs are going to make it easy? Like, on social
mm,
networks, you're supposed to be able to do that on social network. Uh, Practically speaking, it's still complicated, right? You wanna leave Facebook and get all of your stuff. It's not an easy feat.
yeah, well, I say it is quite easy to do that. I think Yeah, I've done it with a couple of clients, and it's just
Okay.
literally took 5 minutes to do, and yeah, I think the benefit of it is, like you say, especially if you're doing writing, I think Claude is a lot better at the creative side of things, writing, because I do a lot of writing, and again, like what you mentioned in terms of like training
Yeah.
LLMs, like
Yeah. Yeah.
again, I think like through the Claude project, I know you can do it on ChatGPT, like the custom GPTs, but
Well,
um,
I think not to get too technical, but I think what the advantage of Claude is that you can separate in certain files, like the skills files. I'm sure you're familiar with that, where you
yeah,
have all the instructions. So maybe if you just get that and export that to another LLM, it could work. In the case of Chat GPT, the issue is that it's a lot is actually in the chat logs,
yeah,
and so it's not necessarily in the parameters or in the task, etc., which makes it a little bit messy,
yeah,
and not only to export to another place, but just to explain to someone, like I used to do a lot of training on Chat GPT, and I was showing things that were working because of previous conversations, but I had to search through the chat logs and show that to some of my students,
mm,
and it was always a little bit weird.
yeah. But yeah, and I think, like you say, that's the future of LLMs is training them on your model, on your offer, and then also, like you said, training it on if you're an IFA or a wealth manager on books, stuff from Warren
Yeah,
Buffett, stuff from
yeah,
top investors, and it's just it's a beautiful time because you've just got basically the knowledge
yeah.
of an expert that's like at the top of the game, and you can include your kind of content as well into that same brain, if you like, your offer and your positioning, and yeah, it just makes it.
That's what we're doing, at Eudokia. Like we have different system, different chatbots, but some of them they're gonna reproduce the knowledge and wisdom of, let's say, Warren Buffett, because you want to invest like Warren Buffett, or very specialized experts, in different field. Let's say in credit derivative swaps, because you want to get the access to the
Yeah,
best knowledge of CDS, and it's gonna be mixed with what the company is doing, what the financial advisors is doing, so that you have the best knowledge management system every time someone wants to put a trade, in CDS, or just as have a basic questions, about the products.
yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, well, I think I've pretty much covered all the questions I've got for you.
Yeah, thank you, Dad. I'm gonna jump to a meeting, in in 1 minute.
Yeah,
But it was great being with you. I would love to continue the conversation overall with you and your community.
yeah, sure, I'll drop you a line. And just before you do go, like, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about you
The
and
best
what
way
you
is
do?
LinkedIn first, and then on LinkedIn, if you give me a phone number, we can follow up on WhatsApp.
Okay, and
Okay.
LinkedIn, it's just Sebastian Lay,
Sebastian Lee, yeah.
Laye.
Lay, Sebastian Lee. Okay.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Sebastian.
Thank you.
Enjoy the
Thank you
rest
for
of
the
your day.
opportunity, and we'll be in touch. I think we have a lot to discuss again, Dan. On clients prospecting and the use
Yeah.
of AI in wealth management.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll drop you a follow up on LinkedIn.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.